Hello, welcome to episode 2 of the Quality Show. My name's Kenny Laing. I'm the Chief Nurse here at Combined Healthcare. So quality is something that's really important to me and really important to the organisation, and it's a real privilege to be on the show and talk about quality and give a really good example about a piece of quality work that's happened in the Trust. It makes a real difference to service users and staff when we undertake work around quality. Sometimes quality can make a real difference, and in this example it can make a difference between life and death. In today's episode we're going to talk about an example of quality work related to safeguarding. So if I can start by asking my guests to introduce themselves and their role at Combined Healthcare.
Okay, so I'm Vickie. I am a Quality Improvement Lead Nurse over the Community Directorate in Combined Healthcare.
Fabulous. So Vickie, can you tell us a little bit more about this young man, Arthur?
So this is Arthur Labine Joe Hughes. He was a 6-year-old boy who you have probably seen. It was all over the media. He died very tragically in 2020 as a direct result of child abuse. He is one of many that we do see in the media, which is, you know, heartbreaking really as a parent, certainly as a parent of a 6-year-old. Obviously there was an inquiry, as there always is, and what the inquiry found is that intervention, appropriate safeguarding measures would have actually avoided this young boy's death.
Okay, thank you. And so in terms of the project that you undertook in relation to safeguarding, and obviously with Arthur in mind, can you tell me a little bit about the project you did and what some of the aims might have been?
Yeah, so I first started in post in the January, and very, very quickly, probably a couple of weeks into post, this massive report landed in my email box with the safeguarding data for 5 different service lines, and I was told I've got to present this in a report. So I got to work with trying to unpick it, trying to understand it. And there's an element in there around our reporting on our compliance with child protection safeguarding processes. And I kept unpicking this data, and I literally just had all these NHS numbers, and I had to cross-reference actually have we engaged in that process. And I was convinced I was getting it wrong because I was coming out with, I think there's the whole community directorate, I think we'd engaged in something like 17% of what we'd been asked to engage. And I was convinced I'm doing something wrong, I'm new in post, and obviously I'm not getting this in my mind. So I rang the safeguarding lead, and she was like, no, you are right, that's probably right. And I was like, right, okay, that's a problem. Thinking about children like Arthur, when you then see the inquiries that say them simple processes are not followed, or we don't share information, and that's what leads to ultimately children's death, I thought that is probably going to be a big piece of work, but a piece of work I'm going to undertake quite quickly. So my aim, although ambitious, is to go from around 34% average engagement to 100%. I want 100% across the community directorate, but you know, big shoes across the organisation that we have 100% engagement in that process.
Okay.
That's my plan.
Fabulous. I mean, it sounds like absolutely the right thing to do. Really, really important work. So can you tell me a little bit about how you what you sought to do and how you prioritised your sort of actions?
Yeah, so the first step really was to understand what the current barriers were, why we weren't engaging in that process, and to understand what that current state process looked like. So we're a huge directorate in the community that covers something like 34 different teams, and that's too big of a piece of work. So I narrowed it down and decided to focus in on the adult CMHTs, look at what they're doing, particularly the city. They obviously have the highest referral rates for child protection in that area. So I started to look at their specific processes. We did some process mapping, and once we'd got an understanding of what the current processes look like, where the challenges are, where the barriers were, we then generated some ideas. What falls out of that is solutions fundamentally. So these pink stickers are what solutions had fell out of that piece of work, and this is known as a prioritisation matrix. So as you can see, so like down here, these are things that we don't think are going to have much impact really, and that, although they might be easy to implement, so they're probably not where I want to prioritise. What we want to think about is things that are going to have really high impact but are quite quick wins, easy to implement. So we've got 3 sort of ideas, that's where we started, and then we've got some things that are harder to implement, that are going to take more time or more resource, but will still have high impact, so they're like next. And then we did find one thing that actually, although is probably not worth the effort, it's too hard to implement, probably not going to have much impact. Okay. So we did that piece of work to give us some focus to where to start.
Fab. That sounds like a really good way actually of coming up with ideas and then thinking about what you need to do first and what you might want to do second,
rather than just being really overwhelmed with all these ideas and trying to run too many things at one time, because you can't change too many things at one time, and then you don't know what's helped either if you're doing too many things.
Yeah. So what were the sort of things that you started with then? So
we started with a very, very quick win. Was we needed to make sure that the invites were going to the right people. That sounds really small, but actually they were going to all sorts of people. So actually we weren't engaging with the process because we didn't know. So we did a very simple piece of work where the safeguarding team got a list of who the current team leads are, who the current clinical leads are, who the admins are, and so that we could make sure it was going. And we introduced a new process that meant that even if they went to the individual practitioner, that they also then went to the clinical lead, team lead, and in one team, the admin lead. That's not been mirrored elsewhere, but that's okay. So that somebody has oversight of it. And then all requests went through the MDT, so that we knew then that somebody had responded. Even if we don't attend the conference, that we respond. In the background, the safeguarding team had created CDC forms within Lorenzo. Okay. So actually we moved away from, a very simple win really, was move away from emailing chairs back to say, no, we can't come and this is the information we have or haven't got, to filling in the CDC form. So we've got an audit trail. It's very clear in our records that there's safeguarding going on. We can pull it, we can govern it, and it can be done in that MDT setting. And so we can evidence that we've engaged.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes the most simple solutions are the best ones, aren't they?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. So what has that meant in terms of improvement?
So we started it in the 2 city CMHTs, pretty much alongside each other. One of the teams chose to have admin in, the other didn't, that's fine. We saw in the first quarter after the change was brought in, we saw a significant improvement in their engagement in that quarter. So I think the following quarter's data showed that they'd engaged with 75% compared to about 35% in both of them teams. That is only to them 2 teams, but actually I think evidence is that it was something like they'd attended 6 out of 7, 1 had slipped through the net. But what it also allowed us to do, because we were utilising CDC forms, is unpick which ones fell through the net and why, and understand actually that was very early on in the process. You know, it just got missed, it was human error. So that was really helpful. Since then, we've started to then embed that process across all the other adult teams, but also across the other service lines, and we're starting to see them adapt it in their own way. You can't lift what works specifically for one team into another area because they're that different. It's like playing football and rugby. You can lift the skeleton, but actually the team dynamics are different, the way their patients are different. But we have started to see a general consistent improvement across the whole directorate. So there's been another quarter's data that adult teams as a whole have engaged with 58% now compared to like 17% in the previous quarters. When you compare it, evidencing that all the teams are starting to gradually, hopefully consistently engage in that process.
Fantastic, that's brilliant.
They find it easy as well, actually, that's the feedback, they find it easy. Their feedback from their MDTs is that the MDT are grateful to have that overview, that there might be child protection that they wouldn't necessarily have if it's just landed with a practitioner that's not done anything with it.
Fabulous. No, that's really, really important. And I think one of the key things for me is the data, isn't it? Unless you've got really good data, you can't evidence the improvement, can you? So you
can feel improvements sometimes, and you can feel that soft intel consultants saying actually it's really helpful to have that information, it's really good to have it through MDT, but you can't evidence it. I think initially there was some resistance thinking this is going to be a big piece of work, particularly for team leads and clinical leads who are already swamped at that capacity, and it's just something else. But safeguarding is everybody's business. We have a duty to protect children like Arthur, and actually it's not that many. I think on average, a team might get 5 or 6 a quarter. It isn't that many when you actually break it down.
Yeah, fantastic. Brilliant. And so I understand you also created a clinical chart.
Yeah, so because we've started utilising the CDC forms a bit more consistently, they are easier to find in Lorenzo because you can find them in forms, so Performance can also pull them. But I think where we're moving as an organisation actually is into clinical charts. So our care plans are now under clinical charts. And the idea is, in Lorenzo, you can open a clinical chart and it will pull all of the information that you need. So it's accessible, it's easy to find, and it's all in one place. So we mirrored that and have created a safeguarding clinical chart. Right. So with clinical systems and the safeguarding team and myself, and a working group of a couple of people across the directorate have built what we feel needs to be in it. It's flexible, we can change it. So the idea is, any safeguarding that comes onto the radar, whether it's you making a referral, you've got a child protection request, you can open a chart. That chart will then stay open in that patient's record, but any CDC forms, any safeguarding referrals, any risk assessments that reference safeguarding will all be there, so that in future they're not lost. Because what can happen is people can transition between teams. One team might have a really good handle on that this adult has got a child that's got child protection needs and engaged in conferences and have that in care plans and risk assessments. 12 months later, they might have had a couple of admissions, they could be under a different team, and we don't necessarily know. And to find it in the notes, to find anything in clinical notes is really hard. This way, at least, everything's really accessible.
Fantastic. That sounds like a fantastic innovation. And for safeguarding particularly, obviously, you need to be able to put your hands on things straight away.
Quickly,
you need to be really, really well informed. So that sounds like a really good innovation. Okay.
Even if it's just for awareness. So we do have some challenges around, we don't engage in them processes sometimes because out in the community we have people sitting on waiting lists. So practitioners will have a request come and say, well, I've not seen them, they're on a waiting list, I've got no information to share. Actually, no information is information. Even if we haven't seen them or we've only seen them once or they only have annual reviews, that is or could be key information. So if we can use the CDC form, even in 2 years, if that person's seen, in 2 years we can say, oh, actually, there was a child protection at the point of referral as well. Do we need to think about that? And it allows us to think about, do we need to review that person? If that person's only having annual reviews, for example, with a medic, and a child protection comes in, there's a CDC form, it's easily accessible, it's visible to MDT, do we need to review that patient sooner? Is there something we need to do differently? Do we need to consider that as part of risk?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's see the results you've delivered so far then.
So I've touched on the results actually, and I think we have continually seen that improvement, and like I said, we've particularly the 2 teams we started the pilot in are now engaging pretty consistently in about 75%.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much. Great. And how about any lessons you've learned so far, and maybe something about if other people are wanting to do a quality improvement initiative?
So lessons learned, obviously I learned to use the tools, some self-taught, some through other people, and I guess my lesson would be that I use other people's resource. So, there is people in the organisation that have this knowledge and have these skills for things like prioritisation matrix. I am one of them now. So I learned a lot of lessons around how to use tools, how to use data. Have faith in yourself that you're not getting it wrong. Actually, that is right, and you need to do something about it. And I think my lessons were you are one person. I would like to change the world very quickly without thinking about all the detail in between, but actually you have to persevere. It's slow, it can be frustrating, you can fail quite quickly, you can think, oh, this is a really good idea and it not work, or it not work for that area, and you have to go back to the drawing board, and that's okay. That was a big lesson for me. As a red personality, I really struggled with that initially. I think if anybody was to do any project, I think I'm really passionate that we don't think about projects as big ticket. This is a big ticket item, you know, it has significant impact potentially on patient safety. It was a big project. It'll go on for the next like 12 months probably until we're there, and then it'll need to be reevaluated. But actually there's things people do every day that are quality and are innovation, and I don't think they recognise it. So I think my advice would be, if you think you can make a change, whether it makes a change to your daily practice and it just makes your life a little bit easier on that day, or it makes a significant impact on patients, I think do it and use people in the organisation.
Yeah, no,
Don't do it alone.
agree. No, I think that's a fantastic, this is a fantastic example, isn't it, of quality improvement. But like you say, quality improvement can be small, incremental.
We've moved the
change,
phone from
can't
here
it?
to here to
Absolutely.
stop, you know, to stop all that wasted time that people are walking to a phone, something like that.
Yeah.
That's quality improvement.
Yeah, and cumulatively across a whole organisation, everyone's thinking about small incremental changes. It makes a huge difference,
yeah,
doesn't
it does.
it? Yeah. So great, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
That's been a fantastic example of quality, I think.
Thanks.
And hopefully soon we'll have more episodes of the Quality Show with other great examples from across the Trust.